Lena had always been the quiet one in class. She sat at the back, blending into the walls, her voice barely louder than a whisper. She loved stories, the way words could weave entire worlds, but she had never been brave enough to tell her own. Her English teacher, Mr. Carter, had noticed. He had seen the way she scribbled in her notebook during lunch breaks, the way her eyes lit up when she read a passage that moved her. But he also noticed the way she shrank whenever someone asked her to speak. One day he placed a flyer on her desk, "Creative Writing Competition, share your story." Lena stared at it for a long time. The idea of people reading her words thrilled her, but the thought of them judging her, dissecting her thoughts, terrified her more. She shoved the paper into her bag and told herself it wasn't for her. Days passed. Then weeks. The deadline loomed closer, and Lena wrestled with indecision. She wanted to try, but doubt whispered in her ear. What if they don't like it? What if I'm not good enough? It was Mr. Carter who finally pushed her forward. "Lena," he said after class one day, "what's the worst that could happen? Someone doesn't like it? That doesn't erase your story." That night, she sat at her desk, staring at the blank page. Then, slowly she began to write. She poured herself onto the paper, her fears, her dreams, the things she was too afraid to say aloud. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. When she finally submitted it, she expected to feel relieved. Instead, she felt exposed. Vulnerable. Then the results came in. She won. The day of the award ceremony, she stood in front of the entire school, clutching the microphone with trembling hands. She could barely breathe, but then she looked at Mr. Carter in the crowd. He nodded. So she took a deep breath and began to read. For the first time, Lena's voice filled the room. And for the first time, people listened. From that day on, she was no longer the girl who blended into the walls. She was Lena, the girl who had a story worth telling.